Hello and welcome to Flix Joystix. I'm your host Guy, and for today's Flix section we're going into independent film as we're talking about 2017's A Ghost Story. That was directed by David Lowery. A Ghost Story was put out by A24 Films. I've been trying to follow more independent film lately, and as it so happens, all these recent films that I've been interested in are all coming from A24. The first movie was The Disaster Artist, followed by The Last Movie Star, and then The Florida Project. So let's check out what else I have. A Ghost Story stars Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara as a married couple who are planning to move out of their current home. However, their plans are derailed when the husband is killed in an auto accident. What's interesting about this film is that the two lead protagonists are never given names. They're simply known as C and M. But I find that the story doesn't really focus on things such as complicated back histories on characters. It's simply a ghost story. Reviews have been mixed on this film. Some really love it and some really don't. I'm actually on the side of I really liked it, but I do understand that this is a very slow-paced movie. You have to be very patient in order to watch it. And my best advice for this film is don't watch the trailers. The trailers don't really spoil so much plot details as it does the progression of events that happen. You kind of get an idea for some things that will happen in this movie. And if you're actually interested in seeing how all this plays out and what's the end resolution for this film, just avoid it. It kind of spoils a couple things for me, and you know how trailers are. Get some basic plot synopsis, don't ruin this for yourself. As far as the story goes, the wife comes to the morgue to identify her husband's body. Shortly after she leaves, the husband comes back as a ghost, and I mean a literal ghost, like a cartoon. It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown level ghost. It's the most basic representation of what a ghost would look like, the white sheet with the black eyes. The ghost makes his way back to the house and cannot speak or interact with his wife. Now, there's one scene that if you do know anything about a ghost story, you've probably heard about this. There is a pie eating scene, and it is real time. You watch Rooney Mara eat a pie in about 5 minutes. Some people have said about 7 to 9. It's probably about more like 5 minutes, but you see her eat the whole pie. If you've ever lost a loved one and have gone through those initial stages of shock and grief, then the scene is a little more relatable. The ghost can only stand and observe and can't do anything, can't comfort her, can't let her know that he's there. He's simply an observer. Time doesn't even work the same way. Walking from one room to another can be the passage of several years. The only one who is aware that he exists is a neighboring ghost next door. They can essentially wave to each other and speak in a ghost language that we can't hear but is represented through subtitles. And the ghost next door has been there so long they can't even remember who they were waiting for. So that opens up a new subject in itself. How long do these ghosts truly exist? Can this ghost even remember itself after a length of time? Does it remember what it's like to be human, or what's keeping it in the real world and not allowing it to progress into the afterlife? Is there a length of time where it simply can't understand humans anymore? We see the world from the ghost perspective, and what's really interesting is that even though Casey Affleck is covered in a sheet the entire film, you do get a sense of understanding of what he's going through. The only time he can make his presence known is when he feels a strong emotion such as grief or frustration or anger or even despair. Now, as far as spoilers go, and I'm going to start getting into that area now, so much time passes that eventually the wife moves out and leaves her husband behind without even knowing. Eventually, as time passes, a new family moves in, and the kids can kind of detect that there's a ghost in the house, and the ghost reaches a point where that it's so frustrated that someone else lives in its house that it throws a violent tantrum and eventually scares the family away. The ghost walks into another room, and it's shown that even more time has passed. There's a party going on with all these young 20, 30-somethings, and they're talking about the existence of life and the meaning of it and what really brings definition to our existence. We're alive, in a sense, as long as people are there to remember our memory and our stories and our music and our art and our contributions to life, but eventually there comes a point where someone might not remember anymore. And it's a really interesting explanation that not only talks about how an individual is remembered, but how humanity will be remembered. One day, eventually, we'll just be a blip on the face of the universe, and eventually extinguish. As the ghost does not process time like we do, years are merely seconds to it. It goes through an entire lifetime, and what's even more interesting, it actually starts over again. I don't want to spell out every plot point for the film, but it's definitely a film that makes you think about your place in the world, and even what happens to us when we die. For me, that reaches a point where I was wondering if the ghost is even human anymore. As if all those concepts of what humanity is and what it meant to see, does that even matter? Is that even in the grand scheme of things? Does it even remember why it's there in the first place? That it's been haunting for so long and it just never seems to end until there is a moment which it eventually does. If you're a fan of big explosions and witty dialogue, I probably could not recommend this film to you. There's almost no dialogue in this film, and there's even a couple points where people are speaking in Spanish for an extended number of scenes. You don't really need to understand what they're saying, as you definitely get the intent. I liked A Ghost Story. I thought it was interesting and thought-provoking. It's definitely something that you won't see as a standard film in the theaters. The visual style of this film is very unique. It looks like a 16mm film. And I think it's really impressive that they made the most stereotypical depiction of a ghost actually look haunting and interesting. I like A Ghost Story enough to recommend it. It makes you think during the film, and it even makes you think after the film. And isn't that the point of what cinema is all about? In any case, thanks for watching this review. I'm definitely trying to put more of the flicks into the Flix and Joystix title, so I'll be trying a couple other different films outside of the main pop culture style films. I'll definitely see you that next time. Take care.